Hello, my name is Patrick Kendall, and I am here today to show you why on-demand aviation is the ideal next step for your growing company. In the agenda for today, I will get to my bottom line up front, what I like to call the 5 W's. We will then go into various flight department structures, ownership options, and notional itineraries based on previous discussions. We will talk about aircraft and budget analysis. I will reaffirm some recommendations, and we will go over a rough procurement timeline before concluding with any questions you may have. Who are you? You're a profitable and growing business. As business increases, the demands on your time and energy increase along with it. Your time, both at work and home, is highly valuable, and we can show you why on-demand aviation will allow for company growth while getting back your precious time. What do you need? You need on-demand aviation in order to increase your productivity and profitability, but not at the expense of your personal and family lives. When do you need it? Sooner rather than later, in order to meet the demands of the growing business, both in terms of regularly scheduled trips and in unscheduled short-notice taskings. Where do you need it? Simply put, nearby. You must be able to easily access your aircraft and operate into and out of a variety of airfields that allow proximity to your wide variety of locations. Most of these locations are in smaller markets, and being able to access smaller airports at each of those places is very important. On-demand aviation significantly widens that aperture when compared to commercial airline travel. Why do you need it? On-demand air travel removes several of the constraints that are weighing you down. You can minimize your time away, maximize your productivity, and steadily expand into new markets without having to worry about how you will get to them. What can you expect? Growing pains. As with any new venture, the road will be bumpy at first, especially when building an aviation program from scratch. You can also expect to learn a lot about the maintenance side of things and how vital it is to keep the aircraft in good working order. So when we talk about flight departments and flight department structures, what do we mean? Well, when choosing how you want to utilize on-demand aviation, the first thing you need to do is select the type of operation you want. As you can see, there are several options, and the one you choose will have a direct corollary to the amount of control you have over the process. You will note the arrow on the side, which depicts the relationship between cost and control when choosing the type of department you want. First is an in-house flight department. The department is company controlled, and you have the power to hire and fire all of the department employees. Just as importantly, you can develop the policy that governs all aspects of aircraft ground and flight operations. This includes aircraft use, flight, and maintenance scheduling, etc. This option comes with the highest upfront cost to the company, and there is risk in the fact that you are dependent on one and only one aircraft. One caveat there is when the plane is in the air, the pilot in command is in charge, no matter who is riding in the back. This is our recommended course of action. Hiring 2 full-time pilots and a full-time maintenance technician will set you up for success. Most flight departments are known as 2 pilots in an airplane, and an in-house maintainer will enable you to stay ahead of the game when it comes to all phases of the maintenance process. And it gives your company built-in expertise when the aircraft requires maintenance outsourcing. You set the policy, you hire the people, you build the relationships. Next is the aircraft management company. This is an ideal option if you want the convenience of your own aircraft without the stress of the day-to-day issues that arise. For a monthly fee, the company takes care of details like training and maintenance. The management company can also charter the aircraft out to offset your costs. This avenue does come with a loss of privacy and personal relationships that you'd have with an internal flight department, and your scheduling flexibility is reduced since someone else is managing operations. Next is joint ownership. This is another way to keep costs down. It involves 2 or more companies co-owning the aircraft, which shares the tax burden, liability, and depreciation. One of the companies usually handles the flight operations side, with the other owners paying their share of the fees. When you co-own an aircraft, however, the biggest issue that can arise is scheduling. All of the co-owners want the aircraft at their convenience, and that will lead to friction. An ironclad scheduling agreement and adjudication process must be worked out before entering into this type of agreement. Fractional ownership is similar to joint ownership, but instead of entering into an agreement with other users, you purchase shares of an aircraft managed and operated by a third-party provider. Shares usually range from 50 hours to 400 hours per year, which is usually between a 16th and a half of a share. The best part about this is you are guaranteed to have an aircraft at the time and place of your choosing, and the provider handles all operations-related issues. However, you may not always get the aircraft you want, and fractional ownership can carry with it caveats such as pre-positioning fees and airport restrictions. You also run into problems if you exceed the amount of contracted hours, and there are a limited number of fractional jet providers from which to choose. Charter is the least expensive option and allows you the ability to right-size an aircraft to the trip you want to take. There are many charter companies out there which allows you the ability to choose the best among them. This is also the least flexible option, however, and carries with it hidden fees that you wouldn't have with your ownership of an aircraft. You will also have little to no consistency in regards to who is flying in the airplane, which can hinder your privacy. So now that we've talked about flight department structures, let's get into some ownership options for you. There are three basic ownership options when we talk about on-demand aviation: outright ownership, leasing, and charter. Since I spoke about the charter option previously, I will omit that option here. Outright ownership means you buy the aircraft and it becomes a company asset. This allows for the best purchase option as you get the pick of the litter. As opposed to leasing, which I will discuss shortly, there are no hours limitations and you control all of the accompanying responsibilities, such as maintenance and policy, like I spoke about earlier. You can also charter the aircraft to offset the costs if you wish. However, you are responsible for all costs that come with the aircraft, and this option carries with it the most upfront costs since you start from scratch. You also risk being stuck with a plane that does not end up meeting your needs. Outright ownership is our recommended course of action. While it requires significant upfront investment, it is ideally suited to meet your needs, especially regarding short notice demands. It also provides the most variety of aircraft from which to choose and immediately becomes a company asset. And you can use it as you please without the constraints and restraints that come with leasing or charter options. Leasing doesn't tie you to an aircraft that you may not like. At the end of the term, you can simply walk away with no liability. Additionally, you aren't responsible for the maintenance scheduling portion of the aircraft ownership, as the lessor can handle that for you. However, as I said before, leasing can come with additional restrictions that may not work for you, such as hours limits and airfield restrictions. Leasing tends to be more expensive in the long term, and scheduling can be more difficult. So now that we've chosen an aircraft, let's talk about some of those sample itineraries we developed. We created a series of sample itineraries based upon previous discussions with your team, which I'll briefly describe, and which go into greater detail in our written report. Bottom line, you can save a tremendous amount of time and gain an incredible amount of productivity if you have your own airplane and flight department. If you make the most of your time, and if you prefer to work long days with more nights at home, you can visit Lubbock, Joplin, Little Rock, and Jackson and be back home in just 2 days. You can leave for Syracuse and Utica and be in your beds that same night. You can tailor your itineraries for trade shows and occasional visits to Washington, D.C. and San Francisco to meet your needs. And most importantly, for the technical side of the house, you can almost put an end, aircraft maintenance notwithstanding of course, to having to scramble to buy last-minute airline tickets at the worst possible hours. In addition, you can take more technicians with you since the aircraft sits 8 passengers, with the twofold benefit of finishing the job sooner and maximizing training, which will enable you to send them out on their own eventually while you tend to other higher-level matters. As a result of this analysis, the forecasting flying hours per year to meet all of these needs is 390. This is where we should talk about the third investor's use of the aircraft. We understand that he takes frequent trips to Boston and San Francisco and also may want to use the aircraft for family vacations. Regarding his business trips, we recommend that the airplane only make 1 to 2 trips to Bermuda per year. The reason is that flying the plane from Nashville to Bermuda just to pick him up will incur a far higher cost than having him fly to meet the aircraft. Additionally, flying the aircraft there and back will quickly accumulate hours on the aircraft, and our analysis budgets for 450 hours per year. There are commercial nonstop flights to both Boston and Atlanta. If he wants to use the plane, you could either pre-position in Atlanta or he could meet it in Nashville, and you can operate from there. Regarding non-business use of the aircraft, and this obviously applies to everyone and not just the Bermuda investor, there are laws that specify proper non-business use of the aircraft that you must follow. Principal among them is that the cost of the aircraft use must be designated as part of any compensation package, as it is viewed as employee compensation. We strongly advocate that you consult either your own legal team or outside aviation legal counsel to help you navigate the implications of using business aircraft for personal use. So now that we've talked about organizational structures and ownership options, let's talk about the aircraft type and analysis. We studied several aircraft types, models, and production years when performing this analysis. We settled on 3 options that we believe best fit your needs. As an entering argument, we did not consider turboprop aircraft. We chose a category of aircraft that accommodates 7 to 9 passengers, even though many of your trips will only involve 2 to 3. We did this because the third investor has indicated that he wants to use the aircraft on occasion to carry his family, and because seating capacity allows for more company members to take short-notice tech-related trips. We also considered aircraft that could get you anywhere in the continental U.S. without stopping. Each of the aircraft below are capable of flying from Miami to Seattle nonstop. Additionally, all three aircraft are capable of operating from airfields that have between 5,000 and 6,000 foot runways. This significantly increases the number of airports that you can access, like we talked about earlier. When you see the operational costs, those are defined as everything it takes to operate the airplane. Costs are broken down into direct operating costs, which are variable, such as fuel, maintenance, landing and parking fees, catering, etc. Then there are fixed costs, such as employee salaries, hangar rental, insurance, and crew training. Operating costs overall tend to decrease as aircraft use increases due to the fact that the fixed costs are then divided by the higher number of hours the aircraft flies. So as you can see, we have 3 aircraft that we ranked higher than the rest with one recommendation. The Hawker 800 XP is a 2001 model, has 4,437 hours, 8 passenger capacity, refurbished interior in 2019, has a 2,400 plus nautical mile range. Operating costs are $2,810 per hour with a list price of roughly $1.9 million. Second is the Learjet 60, also from 2001, has a higher operating hours of 5,200, same capacity and a refurbished interior, a little bit older and a little bit shorter range at 2,200 nautical miles. Operating costs of $2,700 per hour and a list price of $1.9 million. Finally is the Gulfstream G150. A little bit newer airplane, which might explain the higher cost, although it does have some lower hours as well, at just below 3,000. Also has 8 passenger capacity, original interior, a good bit of a longer range at 2,760 nautical miles. However, the operating costs and list price are a bit higher at $3,300 and $3.3 million respectively. However, we believe both are within your budget. It should be noted as well in the productivity piece that all 3 are outfitted with Wi-Fi. As you see there, we recommend the Hawker 800 XP. It has a brand new interior, very low hours for the year it was built, and low operating costs. And finally, with the budget analysis, as previously stated, this budget forecast is based on outright purchase of the Hawker 800 XP with an in-house flight department and 450 flight hours per year. We formulated a 5-year forecast and accounted for a 3% rise in certain categories throughout each of the succeeding years. In year 1, we estimate your direct operating costs will be approximately $1.265 million, increasing to $1.442 by year 5. Your fixed costs in year 1 are $400,000, increasing to $437,000 by year 5. This brings your total operating costs in the beginning to $1.664 million and $1.879 million by the end of year 5. Keep in mind that these costs are independent of the aircraft purchase price. So once again, to recap our recommendations, outright aircraft purchase, our recommendation is the 2001 Hawker 800 XP. We also recommend an in-house flight department with 2 pilots and 1 maintenance technician. Now, should you decide to procure an aircraft, here's a rough timeline, starting with a written proposal and then today's presentation. The next few steps are your procurement decision and your option purchase type, and then the aircraft type you wish to purchase, followed by legal review and organizational structure decision, whether you want to have an in-house flight department or a management company, etc. And then other decisions down the line, such as maintenance and hangar research, where you want to locate the aircraft. And then you start the employee hiring process, and within about 6 to 7 months, you can begin flight operations. And as you can see there are a couple caveats along the way as well. The bottom line is, as your company grows and seeks new markets, you need the tools necessary to grow with it. Your financial position, both cash on hand and 8% profit margin per year, affords you the opportunity to maximize your productivity and time. The best way to do that is through the purchase of the Hawker 800 XP. It meets your needs today and allows you to step into the future of your business. And with that, I am prepared to answer any questions you may have.